Hello and welcome to Spaced Out. I'm your host Sarah Begum, and today I have internationally renowned artist Nahum. Nahum's body of work challenges our perceptions through unusual perspectives. He has been quoted by Vice as a truly visionary artist who is creating new views of how we should get closer to our planet and the universe we inhabit. Nahum was the first artist to be recognised as a space leader by the International Astronautical Federation, has worked with major space agencies and lectures at the International Space University. And as an artist primarily in my own life, I'm really excited about this episode. So welcome to the show, Nahum.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Sarah. Great to be here.
My first question to you is very simple. What is space art?
I think myself just as an artist.
Okay.
I know there's this term which is space art, and there are many ways of finding a taxonomy of what that is. You know, I mean, we can go from pre-space race moments to art that is done with satellites, or art that is made from Earth to space or from space to Earth, and so on. There are like many subtleties. What I like to think is that, you know, before space exploration was possible, there were already plenty of artists from all kinds of disciplines thinking about our journey in the universe, you know, and eventually some of these ideas, and I'm talking right now just about the so-called Western traditions, because if we go even before, you know, to many indigenous, aboriginal, First Nations, we can see that their cultural traditions have always been very linked to the stars. You know, well, I come from a place where 40 kilometers away from my home, there was a whole city that was aligned with the universe, and where the Aztecs thought, not Aztecs, Teotihuacanos thought that the sun was born, and so you know, it has always been part of human history and civilization, and of course our cultural expressions like the arts have always been amazed, intrigued, and very close to the universe. Now, today, that we can actually go out of the planet and explore a little bit beyond, or either with humans or with machines, then of course that becomes a super exciting possibility for current artists. And we're definitely trying to be, and also when it comes to space exploration activities, you know, like space, of course, it's explored with science and technology, but also in its culture, there are many challenges that have to be addressed by the humanities.
So you've worked on various space missions with NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, and SpaceX. Can you tell us about what those projects were and what you were trying to achieve with it? Over
the last 13 years, I've worked with these space agencies, and for different projects, really. I have a couple of memorable projects. One was in the Cosmonautic Center in Russia, the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center, which is just outside of Moscow. And there we organized a zero gravity flight. So I invited other artists to be part of this and to reflect on gravity. You know, like we always experience this force. Mm-hmm. And in this project, we really wanted to reflect on gravity by its absence. This zero gravity airplane, we transformed it into an artist studio, and we created around 15 artworks. That was one. And then the second one that I would like to share right now is the one that I did with SpaceX and the European Space Agency, and of course the International Space University. It is a light that is inside a kaleidoscope that is on board the International Space Station. This was installed by Alexander Gerst. And this light, it's silent, but when on Earth someone sends the heartbeats by reading the pulse of people's hands, then the light starts flashing according to their heartbeats. So you have this entanglement, if you will.
This was the very first art project to be launched into space.
I'm suspicious about this culture of firsts.
Yeah.
You know, like it's
I'm
been
glad you brought that up. I'm glad you say that, because you're the first person who achieved a first, and who actually challenges that notion of being the first to do something. Our civilization are so used to recording history, and so what you've read, if it's recorded, then okay, this is the first person to walk across the South America or wherever. But what if somebody hundreds and thousands of years ago already did that?
Yeah, exactly. As artists, we know is that you don't create something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And what you do is a continuation of the work of other artists, you know. And also, if we think carefully, there have been a few artists that have been to space that are astronauts in their own right, you know, from Alexei Leonov. I mean, he's a painter, and he did the first spacewalk. Pedro Duque, the Spanish astronaut, he brought a keyboard into space, and he was playing the keys. This culture of firsts is good for press releases, but we all are obliged to recognize all the people that were before you that made your work possible. So there have been artists that have worked with satellites, for example. Yes, it's true that with this work that we did, it was the first opportunity to have a dedicated piece of technology installed in the International Space Station, and that would give us interaction in real time. It was the first time we were able to do that in this way, you know. But I hope many more artists will be able to do these kind of projects.
As a lecturer at the International Space University, how are you preparing your students to become artists like yourself and to commercialize their work with major space agencies or other mainstream space missions?
My experience with ISU students is that some of them have a really strong interest in art, or they want to become artists. I think my goal is not necessarily for them to become artists, but to be aware of the importance of having art and culture in space activities. To show that what an artist is able to do is not to illustrate what science is doing, that what we do is not about communicating scientific advances. What we do is really to work on topics and issues that cannot be addressed by science and technology. Like a year ago, every single serious plan to go to Mars by space agencies, they contain the word colonization or a colony. This is a cultural problem, right?
So what message are you distributing through your art to lead the narrative in space today and to maybe change that?
Yeah, exactly. One is that it's important to have cultural professionals. Problem of colonization, that's a huge one. It's a huge one, because when we go to space, we are not just taking our machines, we're taking our culture. So there are many questions, fascinating questions. One is, what culture is the one that we're sending? Who's deciding what culture goes? Why the colonial narrative is the one that is going to space and not another one that advocates for a reciprocal relationship with the land, for example. So all these things can be addressed from the arts and from the humanities.
How are you addressing that with your art?
Well, in my practice as an artist, I do it in 3-4 different ways. One is with ISU, you know, like by consolidating the humanities department, and be sure that any space professional tomorrow, they went to ISU and they learned about queer culture in space. So they learn about contemporary art, about feminism, about indigenous wisdom. So that's ISU. Second, the International Astronautical Federation, which is this international organization that puts together all the space agencies and industry. 12 years ago, I helped to create the first committee for the cultural and artistic uses of space. So every year we organize 3 panels in the Space Congress where all the professionals come and we talk about art and we talk about these critical issues. Third, through my institute, we are celebrating the 10 years of the Cosmica Institute. And with Cosmica, we do all sorts of programs. Education, we do festivals, we do projects to explore the poetic aspects of living in such a universe, but also the cultural challenges. And we work with astronauts, social leaders, and even people in vulnerable situations, such as refugees and migrants, to reflect on these issues together.
Can you tell us a project that you're working on or have worked on where you managed to achieve some of the things you've just talked about?
Mm-hmm. For example, Cosmica is about doing what we do in the core of the arts, which is bringing together different groups of society. In this case, humanities, the space sector, and then the wider society. So we put them together and then we create programs. I don't know, we have done over 50 programs worldwide, from Japan to South America to Russia
amazing.
To all over Europe, North America, Australia, everywhere. So it's difficult to pick one, but I can tell you.
What has created the most impact or the most powerful change, maybe on a policy level?
Personally, working with refugees and migrants. So we've done these programs in Europe during the refugee crisis, and in Mexico with all the South Americans that are trying to cross Mexico in order to reach the US. So what we've done is we go to these refugee shelters and we stay there, like the Cosmica team stays there for a month. And the idea, we've done different programs, but the one that I like is that they alone in that month, it becomes like we start creating a space mission with all the different modules, but from an artistic way. And then at some point, when they go to space through fictions, then they look back at Earth and they experience something like the overview effect, where they see Earth as a whole. And then we start talking about borders and home. What does that mean? And the overall goal of these programs is to reframe our connection with Earth as the home of everyone. So
beautiful.
Yeah, which is what astronauts experience, right?
Yeah.
Yesterday I was speaking to Frank White, the author who coined this term, the overview effect. This feeling that astronauts experience when they see the planet from far.
How has that developed, do you think, over time? The overview effect, how has that transcended into humanity on Earth?
Yeah, well, the overview effect is a really powerful concept, and I'm very I'm very inspired by Frank White, but at the same time, I think it's very important to develop a ground view effect, which means, of course, it would be great if everyone would have the opportunity to access space. But certainly, at least not with the technology that we have. We don't want to have thousands of rockets launching particles into the atmosphere and create the worst problem than what we already have in the planet. And certainly, going to space is a privileged experience.
Yeah.
No? And tomorrow, who's going to be able to go to space? Those that can afford a ticket of 500,000 or 200,000. But what we want is like, okay, how can you gain an appreciation of living in a unique part of space, which is Earth? And that Earth is part of a bigger thing by just watching the horizon. Just appreciate the fact that we live in space, that we are already in space. And that's what I call the ground view effect, which is something that everyone can have access to.
How do you think space art or art that you create can unify humanity on Earth and help shape policy both on Earth and in space?
In various ways. I have this performance where I hypnotize people.
Oh, cool.
So I have an audience, and once they are hypnotized, I plant in their minds a false memory, something that never happened. However, when they open their eyes later, then they remember something. And the memory that I plant is a trip to the moon, walking on the moon, right?
Can you give us like a 5-minute demo?
Oh my God, takes like an hour.
Really?
The whole thing. Yeah.
Can we travel in lightning?
We do it really beautifully in theaters and with a nice environment.
So tell us about the journey that they go through when you're hypnotizing them to travel to the moon.
Well, one part is the mechanics of hypnosis. So you have to relax everyone and then to narrow down their point of attention, their focus, and then you can go very deep inside their minds. And then, because it's a false memory, you need to find a memory that already exists and then anchor the new memory into that pre-existing memory. Once I do that, I tell them, okay, and there's something that you have forgotten in that specific day that you remember, and that is you actually went on a space mission and then you went to the moon. And something that I really like about this performance is that the narrative is constructed with questions. Like, what do you see? What do you feel? Is there anyone around you? So when people awake afterwards, they remember their own imagination. So if I have 50 people in the audience, then I have 50 different stories. For some people, the moon was pink. For some people, there were rainbows. For other people, they saw their parents who passed away. Some other people, they had religious, spiritual experiences.
Yeah, it sounds almost like astral travelling. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Yes. Is that what some people experience?
Exactly. Some people have really profound spiritual experiences. Some people love it. Some people don't want to come back. Some people want to stay. For some people, it's a very solitary experience. For others, don't. And this is the thing, like, I don't care if this is real or not. But what I do care about is that you had an experience. And ultimately, none of the memories that you have are a real description of the events that happened in the objective reality. These are constructions. We construct them. We're constructing our memories, our thoughts. And not because they are not real or accurate or precise doesn't mean that they are not important. These memories constitute who we are. And that's the important thing.
How does that affect their perspective on space after the journey?
I've been doing this performance already for 5 years, and I think I have hypnotized over 1,000 people.
Oh, wow.
You're
hypnotizing me right now.
in very different contexts, exactly. in very different cultures, I've done it in Asia, in South America, in many different environments. And suddenly I started to realize that the important thing of this performance is there's a point when I asked them to stop walking on the moon and to turn around, and they experience an Earthwise. That's one of the few things that are very well scripted. So they start seeing Earth rising from the moon horizon. And then there's an invitation to reflect on what is home, what is that thing that you're looking there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the emotional part, no? Because something very common is that people experience guilt for how they have treated that place, Earth. So it becomes almost like putting ourselves in a mirror with a planet, and then see what's our role as humanity with our mother. And for me, that's the important part. That's because that's where we really get to feel. You know, we all know about what we're doing to the planet, and yet it's just numbers. And climate change is something very abstract.
This is very
to us.
Yeah.
Then when you feel it, you know, when you feel embarrassed or guilt, or when you feel love for that place, then you can take the conversation into something beyond numbers and statistics and projections.
This is a very powerful way to make people care about climate change on the Earth, and to be more aware of how they treat the planet. It's very beautiful. Like, I'm getting goosebumps and emotions just hearing this. Wow. So as the artist, you're welcome. As the artist, what goes through your mind? What journey do you experience when you're creating your art? It could be this hypnosis, it could be storytelling or poetry or fine art. And how does that impact the messaging that you deliver through your work?
Oh, well, you know, I mean, I always say that I get bored really easily and quickly. But if I have stayed looking and exploring space for so many years already, over a decade, and I'm not tired or bored, and it's because of its very principle of it's universal, right? Mm. We're talking about the universe, so we're talking about everything. Everything we can see from that place, you know, and it's a matter of, it invites us to move perspectives. You know, like I you know what I do when I'm stressed?
What?
I looked at there's this beautiful footage of the sun. So it's like the most detailed video that you can see about the sun.
It's better than the life when I'm stressed.
Like the contract is a disaster, or people are not paying. Okay, I just watch this and I'm like, yeah, perspective. I don't have problems.
I just watch cute cat videos because I think they're aliens, you know, but beautiful, smart, intelligent, and aliens. So that's another story again. So I'd love to know, why do you think it's important to include artists in the space sector, and how can they contribute to the future space missions and its impact on humanity?
The space sector needs creativity and imagination. We're really like touching the boundaries with what is possible to do with our knowledge as humanity. However, artists were very good at also asking questions. I mean, this is what science does, right? We're full of questions. We're fueled by curiosity. We have that critical eye. We're very well trained, you know, like, why are you doing that? Like, in that way? Why don't you do it differently? What if you turn it upside down? So if we bring these skills, then we can start spotting the flaws. And this is not a negative view, but these are opportunities for making things better. Something that I have seen with my very own critical eye, and of course this is shared with many other people, is that while we're developing this latest technology, but then we're using ideas to go to space that are 500 years old. For me, there's a huge imbalance between the cultural ideas and the science. There's a gap of 500 years. Why? We're still thinking in colonial terms when we go to space.
How do you plan to bridge that gap through what you're doing?
Many people ask me, okay, if you have this critique towards colonization, which is going to a foreign land and without any considerations for the history of that land, any local life or culture or evolutionary history, you just go there and you put a flag. And this is what we do in space now. We still put flags, and then you claim it as yours, and you start building the society that you know in order to benefit yourself. Such as if I go to the moon or to an asteroid, I put my flag, and then all my business model is around extractionist capitalism. I'm imposing my culture over there. People will say, okay, yes, but there's no life on those planets. Yeah, but our relationship with all the non-human entities on Earth has been terrible. And this has led us where we are today. And this is slowly extending beyond our planet. If we look at the amount of trash that is around the planet, it's incredible. So we need to really control our imperial spirits and be kinder, or soon we might run into something that we call the anthropocosmos, an era of human interference in the balance of the solar system or of the universe. So what can we do? I don't know. This is the honest answer. I have some ideas of my own, but also if someone claims to have the solution for these problems, then I will be very suspicious of this someone having the idea that will rescue humanity. No, that's what.
Well, you're a board member of Space EU, and that's an initiative to foster a more inclusive space community in Europe. It just goes beyond Europe and the world. But through your role, where do you think the European space community currently sits in terms of diversity, and what would you do, or what needs to happen to make it more inclusive, which will then transcend into the rest of the world?
Yeah, exactly. Great question. I think as Europeans, I mean, I'm Mexican born, but descendant of Italians and Jewish and Indigenous, of course. As a white man, member of the patriarchy, in some places we're being very loud about how to fix the current situation, and again we're writing many new ideas, but I think that we need to shut up for a bit and be silent and listen to all those voices that we have silenced, that we haven't heard, and that we've been neglecting for centuries.
Who are those voices?
These voices are the majority of humanity. We are a minority, but we've been dominant enough to design the planet that we wanted, to design the climate, to decide the future of humanity beyond the planet. Months ago, I was invited to curate a panel for Mars, about humans on Mars. And I thought, if I can really have the freedom that I want to create such panel, I would love to invite indigenous leaders. I would love to invite African scholars, people from,
Yeah.
They've never been asked about what our future relationship with another celestial body could be like. We've been discussing everything, even the solutions, through our own lenses and biases. I don't know if we're going to find answers there, but
I've just had a flashback. Sorry, this is crazy, but
wow.
because I've lived with Indigenous tribes around the world to capture their stories. I've just travelled all over the world, and
Wow.
what I do is immerse in their lifestyles to understand them. And I just had a flashback when I was in the Amazon. I was with the Warani tribe, and I asked the question, what do they believe in? And they pointed to the skies, and they said, we believe in the stars. We don't have any gods or anything. We believe in the stars. And I remember thinking, what does that mean? 11 years later, it sunk in.
Yeah.
So when you mentioned several times so far about ancient and indigenous wisdom relating to space, I would love to know what those teachings are that you've come across that you could maybe share with us today.
Well, okay, I'm very new to this. I had this realization like in November last year. Like, it's a moment for silence, and it happened after having some conversations with a friend that was doing some work with indigenous communities in Guatemala.
Yeah.
And these indigenous people were telling my friend that every time that they say goodbye to a Western person that visits them, they pray for their little sibling. They looked at us as the young ones, as those that are still learning how to handle things, and they wish us, wisdom. And then it hit me, it was like, we need to listen more,
be in touch with nature more.
Yes.
Because
and to have
that's where the answers are, when you listen to what's already there, that's alive around you, that has no voice.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you got me started.
Yeah.
I care about this so much.
Exactly. And our culture can be thought as a balanced one with the natural world.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm in space congresses or space agencies, I see the same bias, and it's time to change things. I cannot stand anymore be watching a panel of heads of space agencies and see 15 white men sitting on stage. like, do we have a problem here?
How would you like to see things change, and what ideas do you have to change that?
As we're speaking, I'm spending days writing ideas for something that I'm calling First Skies, which is the first eyes that looked into the skies. What have they learned? What wisdom they have? What can we learn from them? I mean, I think we have to reimagine our society and humanity and redesign as much as we can. Let's listen at what the others have to say that we have been just ignoring for so long, and we'll see what we'll find. We should work together, with Cosmica. This is what we've been trying to do for many years already, to democratize space activities. I remember in one of the first Cosmica festivals that we had in Mexico in 2012-13, we invited a bunch of European artists to show the projects and all. And then this young girl raised her hand and she was like, all those projects sound great, but my reality is very different from yours. For me, why is this relevant or important when there's not even a space agency in the country back then? And then I was like, true. And I went into have this little depression where reality hit me.
Mini depression.
Yeah, it's like, true. She's right. Yes, you're right. Yes.
What did it
We've
make you
been
think
about privilege, about space exploration, about
and how did it make you feel?
that things are not right. We need a lot of justice. Like last year, it became even more evident the need for social justice. Symbols are important. They don't only represent, but they have the very essence of culture. While America and the world was in total chaos and fire because of the brutal killing of George Floyd, and the Black Lives Matter movement emerged. In the very moment of most suffering and anger, something happened. SpaceX launched a Dragon capsule with 3 white men into outer space. Those two things were happening at the same time. Of course, they are not directly related to each other.
Yeah.
But you see it, and
Yeah.
you see whiteness, and you see patriarchy, and you see a millionaire that is not paying taxes.
You've presented your work alongside Nobel laureates and international leaders in these fields, in the fields of technology, science, and culture, your field. So, what would you like them to understand about the importance of your work and how it could impact them?
We praise science because it gives us a very good representation of the world, but also art. I've always said that if there are 2 or maybe 3 disciplines in human activity that go as deep as possible into the fabric of existence are, of course, science, art, culture, and philosophy. Everything else is just trading and applying this knowledge. So artists, far from living in bubbles, as many people think, we go very deep into understanding what's the meaning of 2 hands touching, or of clouds moving, or the meaning of words, or what is a shape, etc. So we create sense and meaning.
For you to have such a profound view and experience on us, on our existence, and how we interact with the planet, I would love to know why you became an artist, a space artist, and who influences you, or what influences you.
I knew I wanted to be an artist when I was like 6 years old, and I was drawing and painting in an obsessive way in my room. And then I discovered music, and then my father gave to me the Cosmos series by Carl Sagan. And I think all those things stayed in my subconscious, and they will appear later in my life, because for a period of time I forgot that I wanted to be an artist, and I was just being a teenager and doing what a teenager does. So but eventually, yes, I've lived, so I'm glad. Yeah, my spirit was in the arts, and I'm inspired by artists and by art and by music.
Is there anyone in particular?
That's always such a tough question. Right now, in my head, there are 2 artists that come to my mind, because we're celebrating 5 years without them. One is David Bowie.
Yeah.
Who
Space oddity.
Certainly is very important for the space community.
Yeah.
And the other one is Prince, who was the master of rhythm and of originality. So, yeah, both of them are huge teachers.
What did they teach you?
To stay truthful, rebellion, like be rebellious, like be a rebel is good.
Yeah. It's good for the soul.
Speak your mind. And to believe in your art.
You have such pace to the way you speak. It's like it's so calming and soothing. Like it's almost like It's composed.
It's
Your
composed.
speech
Oh,
is like,
thank you.
it's composed. It's really cool. I'm going to ask you a fun question. So, if there was a creative way in which you could launch yourself into space, how would you do it? Where would you go, and why?
I mean, this is one of my dreams. I would dig a hole, and my destination would be the center of Earth.
You would go to the center of Earth.
Yes.
It's amazing. Why?
I've always been like that curious to see the very core of this thing, no? Like, I mean, it's not going out; it's going very deep inside. Oh, that's a journey that blows my mind.
What do you think you would find there? I've never had that answer before. It's fascinating.
Well, I've watched documentaries about what's in the center of Earth, and it's always. I mean, of course, it's not like a physical space you can access. It's like density and heat, but to see, like what's in the center of, in a way, of humanity. Like sometimes I think, like if humanity had a shape, what is the shape of humanity? And certainly it's a sphere. Earth gives shape to humanity as well, like in the cover of the planet. And to go to that point in the very center and to see that stone or melted or plasma or whatever that is. It blows my mind.
Maybe that could be one of your projects. Maybe you could start a project. Dig to the center of the Earth.
Exactly. I've researched about it, and the biggest hole is in Russia. But it just goes a few kilometers.
You're serious? I love it. This is amazing. Wow. Well, I really want to see you do this. And what are you currently working on? And what's your next project that we can look forward to? Besides this digging the hole to the center of the Earth project.
Yeah. Apart from that, and apart from the First Skies projects, I'm working on a project about time. So I did a project about gravity. Next one is about time, and these are large projects. So what I want to do is to do a series of jumps from the stratosphere. I like extreme experiences and environments. So I want to do halo jumps, high altitude jumps. And apparently in this kind of jumps, your experience of time gets very distorted. So while I'm falling, I want to create some artworks in those really long falls. And this project is called Conjuring Time, because to the human experience of time, this substance is very malleable. Sometimes we can make it long and sometimes very short based on our emotions and the temperature of the room, etc. So I want to play with that. I want to conjure time.
How long would you be falling for?
Good question. I think it's minutes. Yeah, it depends. I mean, this is the difficult thing. I'm trying to find out where I can do this. I already have 3 potential places, but of course I need to do it in tandem. It's a very risky jump, and then I wanted to do it last year, but pandemic.
Being a Mexican artist and advocating for diversity within the space sector, would any of that have any influence on your art in the future? Or these projects?
Absolutely. Actually, more than what I can imagine now. Like I was born in this valley that we call Mexico City today. And little by little, I'm realizing the big impact that city and that land has over me. So I'm already thinking of 2 or 3 really big projects and very deep projects that are related to that, to the connection that I have to that place with what I learned, but also to my roots, from my individual experiences that I was born there, but also the genes of my parents come from all over the place.
Yeah.
And that story, I was really fascinated when I read Roots by Alex Haley, Black American, and he goes back in history and he finds the root of his family down to Gambia in Africa. And he created a beautiful book about the history about this journey. Those journeys that are very personal, but yet these are the journeys of humanity. It's something I'm doing. So I'm doing a lot of family research at the moment. How genes travel. And this is related at the end to space and all that. Because I really believe that borders are very dystopic on these days.
Well, it's good to have an accurate representation of humanity on Earth in space, as you said, and as you're working to change. And it would be great to see that happen, and soon. You did this project where you designed a unique methodology used in training future astronauts and space experts to face complex and unfamiliar problems in imaginative ways. And everyone has to use that. So can you explain how that works and what inspired you to come up with something like this?
Well, it inspired me when, again, after teaching to students that are going to become professional space experts. Yeah. Most of them, they come from STEM degrees. And then when you ask, why do you want to dedicate your life to space? They were telling me very cold answers, in my opinion, like, oh yeah, it's a good career, it's about innovation, I want to be an entrepreneur and make money. It's like, you don't do space for those reasons. So I started working on different methodologies to open them up. Emotionally, and to reflect deeper into what's their very own rationale to work in space. And then you start finding really beautiful things, like most of people that work in space, they were inspired when they were kids by cultural products such as films. Space Odyssey is a classic.
Yeah, I tried to recreate that.
How did you try to recreate that?
Using After Effects. After Effects. I tried to make an animation and then green screen and put myself in it.
Beautiful.
It's embarrassing.
Beautiful. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, books, music. But also to find very emotional, sentimental reasons, so we can first acknowledge that we're doing this because of inspiration, and secondly, because the role of imagination is very important. And after an intense STEM experience, most people don't feel very creative or very imaginative. So it's about reconnecting them with this source, so they can create. And I love to use these 2 examples. Again, I normally ask them, okay, who do you think is the most visionary person in our field? You can tell me, Sarah. Who do you think is the most
I think
visionary?
Everyone's going to say the same thing, which is Elon Musk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Elon Musk. What's his vision?
To get people to Mars and to create a city on Mars.
Okay, I'm as someone that works with visions and with an imagination. I have to say that that's a very that's not even a vision.
Just in case this planet is destroyed, we need a backup, and by colonizing another planet, gives us a chance to preserve humanity, this humanity. But at the same time, it should also make us aware that, oh crap, planet Earth is in danger and we need to take care of our planet. I've been observing Earth observation data from the ESA websites for the last week or so, and I just couldn't stop crying, and I had nights where I just didn't sleep properly because it was scaring me, because I think we have maybe a century, if that, to do something about it, and so I just came up with this crazy idea.
Much less, 30, 40 years. Max.
Yeah. Oh crap.
Yeah.
We need technologies that clean up the space and make the clouds white, you know? That's one way.
Exactly. If we really want to push the visions of space travel, then we have to go really beyond going to Mars, to that idea that has been ever since we spotted so-called rivers in Mars, like centuries ago. So, and this is why history is important. Who were the first people who thought of developing a space program in Russia, in the Soviet Union, or in the US? What are we going to find? We're going to find some very magical ideas around. Why the Soviets developed a space program? Eventually, they sent the first object into space, the first animal, the first human, the first woman, the first space station. It was not because they wanted to go to space. They had a greater idea, which was the science of resurrection. And we're talking about the so-called cosmists, which was an almost religion, or by this group of very magical thinkers who were saying that people should stop dying and that we should bring everyone that has lived on this planet back to life, back to Adam and Eve. And because if we achieve that, then we are going to be many humans. And then that's why we needed to inhabit other planets. And then we needed to find a way to control the orbits of the planet so we can create like a line of many planets and sail together the cosmos. This was the science of resurrection, or the common task. It happened that one of these thinkers was developing these ideas of how to recollect the particles of souls that have escaped the planet. And by not accident, but he wrote the rocket equation, Tsiolkovsky.
Oh wow!
And with these very magical ideas, a full space program was developed, and we were able to go to space. If you go to the US, who was the founder of JPL? There was a guy in the desert with 3 friends, Jack Parsons, who was part of a magical cult. And they were doing black magic and having rituals. And in the daytime, they were developing the first generation of rockets in the US. Eventually, he founded his magical lab, the JPL, which stands today for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, but it was something more like the Jack Parsons Laboratory of Magic. So what I want to say is that sometimes poetical thinking or magical thinking or artistic thinking really sends visions to the impossible. And then results might happen somewhere in the middle. This is why I think going to Mars is not a vision. It's just something that is going to happen anyways. And this is why we need to be wilder, like if we're really going to change, like this American philosopher, Frederick Jameson, he a few years famously said, today, it's easier to imagine the end of the planet than to imagine an alternative to capitalism. That's where the imagination stands right now.
That's worrying.
Failed. So this is what we're trying to do with this kind of activities. Push imagination. We really need it.
We do. Wow. You know, I didn't, before this conversation, I had no idea that it was, but this is what I was going to learn. You know, it's so important, and creative thinking is like critical thinking in a way. It's as important. It's so, it can inspire and give birth to revolutionary ideas that transcend to science and other areas. And yeah, wow. This is great. I can't wait to re-listen to the whole thing again. I want to say thank you so much for your time and all your insights. It's, yeah, wow.
Oh, thank you.
So inspiring.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I mean, if anyone wants to know more about these things or have some references, I'll be happy to do so.
Where can people see
on social media?
What's your social media?
Nahum, my name, Nahum, artist. And then you find me everywhere.
Perfect. So Nahum Artist. And you're on Twitter, on Instagram? Everywhere. Amazing.
Except TikTok. I
don't do TikTok.
I'm scared of that. Yeah.
Amazing. I will send them to Nahum's social world, social universe.
Yes, come.
Great. Thank you so much, Nahum. I have
Thank
an
you so much,
amazing day. Yeah, I'm going to be checking out more of your work now. Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.